Hey guys, it's ENOS-GAMING, and today we're going to be talking about what if I made the lizard's origin story. Now, I actually have two origin stories. Let me know in the comments which one you think is better. But the first origin story I originally came up with was it starts off with Peter Parker and Mary Jane having lunch together at school. They see a sign come up talking about a school dance, and Peter's like, oh no, I forgot about the dance. I haven't even asked anyone out. And then that's when Mary Jane kind of turns to Peter and then asks him if he would be her date to the dance. And he says yes, because, she's his best friend. He doesn't see why not. Now, they both go home. Mary Jane is temporarily living with Peter because her house was destroyed during a fight between Spider-Man and Dr. Otto Octavius, and due to that fact, Aunt May was like, oh yeah, you can come on and stay with us, you and your mother. So Mary Jane and her mom have been staying with Peter and Aunt May, which is another story for another time. I might make a video about that, I don't know yet. So they go home. Peter and Mary Jane are, excited for this dance. Aunt May finds out and then tells Peter, come with me, Peter, I want to show you something. She takes him to her bedroom where she pulls out an old box and pulls out a white tuxedo, well, a white and black tuxedo. So Peter holds up the tuxedo and goes, oh my god, this is the suit or the tuxedo that Uncle Ben wore to your guys' wedding. So he feels honored that he gets to wear this to, the school dance. And then Aunt May pulls out an old dress and gives it to Mary Jane to wear to the school dance. Anyway, so the following day is, the school dance. Peter gets ready, Mary Jane gets ready, and this is where I kind of throw in the really famous line, face a tiger, you just hit the jackpot. She comes down in the dress that Aunt May lent her, and she says the line. So they go to the school dance together. And it starts off normal. They have some punch together. They start slow dancing, and then MJ admits her feelings to Peter. And then MJ goes on to say she knows it's kind of weird and sudden, but she just can't hide these feelings. Peter doesn't really know what to say. At first, he's kind of like, well, Gwen's death, was only a few months ago. But then he thinks about it and goes, but if Gwen was here, she wouldn't want me being depressed. She wouldn't want me being sad. So Peter said that he's willing to give Mary Jane a shot and see where this relationship goes. They're both about to lean in for a kiss, but then Peter stops and slowly looks up because his spider sense are tingling. He sees a black hooded figure walking through the school. Sneaks up behind their principal, Principal Kurt Connors, pulls out a needle and jabs it in Kurt Connors' neck. So Peter runs after the guy and goes, hey, stop it right there. The guy runs off. Peter's chasing him, but then stops because his spider sense are going even more crazy. He turns around and sees his principal on the floor, shaking. So he goes up to him and goes, Principal Connors, are you okay? And he looks up, and his skin is starting to change, like, all scaly. And he goes, get away! And then his arm that's been missing for 15 years suddenly starts to grow back. While these scales are forming, his clothes start to rip. So all these students are running away, terrified of what's going on. And then all of a sudden, he fully mutates into a giant mutant lizard. He then starts running at all the kids. They all run away, and then Flash Thompson is trying to run, but nearly gets hit by the lizard. Peter comes running and shoves the lizard out of the way, looks at Flash and goes, don't just stand there, you big idiot, run! So as he runs away, Peter turns to Mary Jane and says, go, I'll be okay, I promise. So he turns around and makes sure all the kids are gone, and he goes, Principal Connors, it's me, Peter. If you're in there, please, don't do this. And then he runs, grabs Peter, slamming him to the wall. Peter punches him in the face and goes, "Please, Dr. Connor, or Principal Connors, I know you're in there." And then he grabs him and throws him through the wall. And then he starts slowly walking towards the wall, and Peter's shoe comes flying out of nowhere, hits him in the face. That's when Peter jumps out in the Spider-Man suit. Now this part I kind of copied from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. He shoots 2 webs out, pulls these lights down, hits him in the head, or the lizard in the head. When the lizard looks up, Peter's not there. Peter then jumps down from the ceiling, shooting 2 webs out, wrapping him around the lizard, and says, "Stop this, this isn't you, I know you can hear me." And then he grabs him and throws him. And then the fight plays out similar to the school fight in TASM 1. But this one, all the cops show up to the school, they surround the school. And then Captain Stacy is like, "Alright men, let's move in." And then Peter and the lizard come crashing through the wall. They all start shooting at the lizard, and Spider-Man puts his hand down and goes, "Stop, stop, stop! It's not what you think, it's not what you think!" And then Captain Stacy goes, "Hold your fire!" As the lizard then grabs Spider-Man, slamming him against the wall. Peter then shoots a web out, pulling some stuff down that crashes into the lizard. He then transforms back into a human, so Spider-Man pulls him out from all the rubble and asks what happened, and he goes on to say he's not sure, but he thinks that whatever was injected in him must have been the serum that he worked on back when he used to be a scientist at Oscorp, and goes on to say that he had a lab partner that was suffering from cancer and created the lizard formula using lizard DNA in hopes to cure his cancer, but it mutated him into a giant mutant lizard. While trying to change him back to human, his lab partner then bit his arm off, causing Curt Connors to no longer have his arm. They were able to give him the cure, but it cost him his life. So then Curt Connors goes on to say, "Whoever injected the serum into me must have perfected it." And that's when Spider-Man asks, "What did this person look like? All I saw was a black hooded figure." And then that's when Curt Connors goes on to say, "I don't know, he had a mask. It was a green rubber mask that almost looked like a goblin." And then that's when Spider-Man just kind of looks up. By this point, he has never met the Green Goblin, but he knows the name the Green Goblin because villains that have been hired to kill him have been hired by the Green Goblin. So he recognizes the name, he just doesn't know who he is yet. And then Captain Stacy comes up to Spider-Man and asks him, "So what's going on?" And then he tells him, says he's about to swing away. That's when Captain Stacy goes, "Wait." He looks around to make sure no one's listening in on the conversation. He goes, "How are you? How have you been since Gwen?" And then that's when Peter says, "Well, it's been hard, but someone that I really trust and love has been helping me through this. Her name's Mary Jane." And Captain Stacy smiles and goes, "That's good to hear, Peter." And then that's when Peter swings away. Now, that's my first origin story I originally came up with, because I do like to write my own fan stories. And then the second one I wrote, I decided to make it officially canon to my Spider-Man universe that I'm writing. This origin story starts off in the year 2010. Richard Parker is working for the company Alchemax and is trying to create the cure for all known diseases. And he ends up finding out that his boss, Miles Warren, has been talking to all these people, these different terrorist groups, these different groups like Hydra, about weaponizing the serum and selling it to them. So he goes to his old lab partner and tells him to hide it. And his lab partner just so happens to be Max Modell, who eventually becomes the founder of Horizon Labs, where Peter in the original comics got his powers. Anyway, so because Richard Parker has hidden the serum, Miles Warren hires the Winter Soldier to go after Richard Parker. The Winter Soldier tracks down Richard Parker to find out that he doesn't have the serum, that it's hidden. He then kills Richard and Mary Parker and reports back to Miles Warren. Miles Warren is angry, and for the past 15 years he's been searching for it. Then it cuts to the year 2025, and there's a psychopathic... Well, he's on drugs in this story. He murdered his wife and throws his daughter off the roof of their apartment. As his daughter's falling, she's screaming, and then all of a sudden, nothing. She opens her eyes and she's moving, but she's not dead. She looks up and Spider-Man's holding on to her, swinging, and then he looks down and goes, "Hi, how you doing?" So she's like, "Oh, Spider-Man, thank goodness. My father, he's back on drugs. He killed my mother. He threw me off the roof." And then Spider-Man goes, "So I take it he's still on the roof?" She goes, "Yes." So he goes, "All right, I'm going to put you down and I'm going to go back up there and take care of him." So he puts her down, jumps on the wall, runs up the wall, and then uppercuts her father, knocking him out. He then goes back down and takes the girl to the police station and then goes home. And then blah, 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 blah. He then goes to Mary Jane. Sorry, he then goes to Gwen's apartment and tells Gwen about what happened and that he feels bad. He is angry with himself for not showing up sooner to save the poor girl's mom. He's upset with himself. Anyway, so then Gwen is trying to calm him down and say you couldn't have known, it's not your fault. And Peter goes on to say, "But I wish I could just know when these things were going to happen so I can prevent these things. Because I feel like if I fail, then I'm failing Uncle Ben." And then that's when Gwen says, "If Ben were here, he would be proud of you for who you are. He would be proud of all the innocent lives you saved, all the criminals you've taken down." And then Peter's like, "You know what? You're right. You really do know how to make me feel better." And then all of a sudden the bedroom door comes flying open and her dad walks in and goes, "Hey Gwen, I was thinking about ordering a pizza for dinner. What do you think?" And Gwen's sitting there nervous and she's like, "Yeah, sounds good." And he's like, "Great." So he then shuts the door and then Peter jumps off the ceiling and is like, "Okay, that was close." He goes, "Well, I better get going." So he heads home, lands in a tree, and then jumps off the tree, but he's not in his suit anymore. He's now in his normal, average, everyday clothes. Unlocks the door to his house, walks in, and Aunt May is sitting there, and she goes, "Peter, our neighbor, her niece is moving in with her soon. So she's going to come over on Saturday, and we're going to have dinner, get to know her niece. Hey, maybe you could be friends with her." And Peter's like, "Oh, yeah, I like the sound of that. I'll be there." Anyway, so then the story cuts to Alchemax. No, I take it back. Then the story cuts to Peter going to his room, turns the TV on in his room, and sees that Horizon Labs was robbed. That a man in a black jumpsuit robbed the building and stole a specialized serum that Max Modell has been keeping for the past 15 years. So Peter sits there kind of curious, what's so special about this to where someone would want to steal it? It then cuts to Alchemax. Max Dillon walks into Miles Warren's office. Miles Warren looks up and goes, "Mr. Dillon, have you brought the item I required?" And he pulls out the serum and he goes, Perfect. We shall test it." So he then goes down to this hidden area of Alchemax that's underground, where they're experimenting and torturing on innocent people. Because Miles Warren, for the past 15 years, has been struggling to recreate the serum. But now that he has it, he ends up testing it on a young adult no older than 19 or 20 years old. And that young adult's name is Kurt Connors. He walks into the room where they're keeping him, and he's all chained up to the wall, and his arm's missing. His arm's freshly missing, only for a couple days. He looks up, he goes, No, please, I can't take any more of this." And then Miles Warren goes, "Relax, Mr. Connors, for I do not wish to harm you, I wish to help you." And he injects the serum into him, and then he leaves. Max Dillon then goes on to say, "Well, sir, how long shall we wait?" And then Miles Warren goes, "I suspect that it should take 2 days for the arm to regenerate." We shall check on Saturday. And then they leave. The story then cuts to Saturday, and Peter was heading to the grocery store to pick up some stuff for Aunt May to cook for dinner for their neighbor and her niece. While walking to the store, his spider sense starts to tingle, and he sees a car driving out of control. So he runs and changes into his suit, and then all of a sudden the story cuts back to Alchemax. Miles Warren and Max Modell then head to the secret room where Kirk Connors is. They open the door, but there's nothing. No one's there. So Max Modell goes, "Did he escape?" So he walks in and looks around, and then a pair of red eyes just appear in the deepest, darkest corner, and a giant mutant lizard comes walking out. And Max Modell goes, "What the heck?" It tries to hit, or he spins around, he spins around, hits him with his tail. Max Modell flies and hits the wall. He then looks at Miles Warren angry and runs and tries to kill him. Max Modell gets up and shoots a blast of electricity out of his hands it hits the lizard, shocking him. Turns around, hits Max Modell again, or Max Dillon. I don't know why I said Max Modell. Max Dillon. He flies and hits the wall. Then the lizard escapes from Alchemax. Then it cuts back to Spider-Man. He lands on top of the car and sees the driver. He says, "Help me, Spider-Man, I can't stop my car." Spider-Man looks up and sees that the car is about to hit a bus. And this was a Tom Holland reference I added. He swings and lands on the side of the bus, sticks his arms out, stopping the car, just like that scene we see in Captain America Civil War. And then he jumps off and opens the door and asks the driver, "Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" And then the driver goes, No, I'm fine. The brakes wouldn't work for some reason. Thank you, Spider-Man." And then that's when Spider-Man's like, "No problem," and his spider sense start tingling again. So he looks up and he sees the lizard running like through town, and all these people are running away scared. And Spider-Man just sits there and goes, "Okay, and now baby Godzilla's running through town." So he swings over, lands in front of the lizard and goes, "Hey, baby Godzilla, how you doing?" And then the lizard spins around, hitting him with his tail, and he flies back, hits a oncoming car, and he gets up and goes, "Not cool." So he swings back out, lands on top of the lizard, and goes, "All right, sorry, but I gotta do this. I gotta fight you." And then the lizard grabs him and throws him. And then like he starts chasing him, and the lizard's just running. Now, the lizard's not really like attacking people. He's just more like trying to run and hide. But because he keeps attacking Peter every time he shows up, Peter's just like, okay, he wants to fight. So he runs or swings out there and kicks the lizard, and he flies back. The lizard then rushes at Peter, and then they have this pretty epic fight in the streets. But then all of a sudden they both grab onto each other and crash to the wall of a bank. And then it cuts to a mother and her daughter walking up to the bank door, and when the mother reaches out to open the door, Spider-Man and the lizard come crashing through the door, and then the mother and daughter run away. Spider-Man looks up and sees a sign, and he shoots a web out, pulling the sign down, and it hits the lizard. The lizard then forms back into a human, and then Peter gets up and's like, "You're just a kid, not that much older than me, I'm assuming." And then he gets up and goes, "Where am I? What happened?" And then Peter goes, "You're in New York. You were a giant lizard, a baby Godzilla, basically, and you were rampaging through the city." And then Connors is like, "Oh, I don't remember. I'm so sorry." And he looks up and he goes, "Who are you anyway?" And he's like, "You serious?" "Yes, I don't know who you are. I'm Spider-Man. I've been around for a few months." And then that's when he goes on to say, "I don't know how long I've been held in captivity. I've been in there so long, I don't even know what day it is, what year it is. I don't even know my own age." And then that's when Peter's like, okay, so someone's kidnapping people, torturing them, and turning them into lizards. But who? And then the cops show up, and then Peter goes, "Well, I'll leave you in the more capable hands of Mr. Captain Stacy here." And then he swings away, but then it's like playing in his head, like, who is this guy? So the police, like, ask him, like, who is this guy? Who did this? And he's like, I don't know. It was so dark, the room. I don't know where I was. I don't know who they were. They just did all this to me. So then Peter swings to the store, picks up the groceries, swings home, changes into his normal clothes, and runs inside. Aunt May's like, oh, Peter, great, you're here. Quick, set the dinner table and I'll cook dinner. Our neighbor should be here any minute. So their neighbor shows up, and it's Madeline Watson. Madeline shows up, and she goes, May Parker and Peter, it's so good to see you. And then they're sitting there talking, and then she goes, this is my niece, Mary Jane Watson. And then when Mary Jane shows up, Peter's eyes grow big, because it's the girl he saved a couple days previously. The girl who lost her mother, the girl that he saved after her father threw her off the apartment. And she goes, hi, I'm Mary Jane, but you can call me MJ. And he goes, I'm Peter. And she smiles and goes, nice to meet you, Peter. And he's just sitting there like, I can't believe that my neighbor's niece is the girl I saved. Then it cuts back to Alchemax, and it shows Max Modell and Miles Warren talking. Max Dillon turns to Miles Warren and says, I don't think that was supposed to happen. And then Miles Warren goes, oh no, it actually was supposed to happen, Mr. Dillon. You see, I gave him the DNA of a lizard. I injected lizard DNA in him to see if that would help grow his arm back. But it didn't. When we finally got our hands on the serum, I assume the serum triggered the lizard DNA to work. Was I expecting a giant mutant lizard? No. But this is better than I thought. Now, we can create our own empire. Our own empire of mutant monsters. Prepare for wonderful things to come, Mr. Dillon. Wonderful things! And then the story kind of ends there. So those are my two origin stories. Now, I do think the high school one, or like the school dance, is like more Spider-Man than this one, because this one was like a little darker. But I also kind of like it just kind of popped in my head randomly. Like, I do think it would be a good addition to see, instead of like Miles Warren the Jackal creating these clones of people, it would be interesting to see him be the reason for all these like mutated monsters. Because like, I know in the original comics he wears like a costume, like a Jackal costume, but in like my universe he is a mutated monster, because he does eventually use the serum on himself and becomes the Jackal. Now, I don't really know how much longer I'm gonna be writing these stories, because I do have an ending already planned out. I just don't know how much longer until I get to that ending, because what I want for the ending is I created a character named the Figment, but he's somebody that knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he knows him very well. He knows like everything about him. He knows how to mentally break him. He knows his weakness. He knows who he loves the most, and he uses that to his advantage. He uses that to break Peter. Now, I already know who I want the Figment to be, because I'm like dropping hints of who he is. And one of the biggest hints is there was a villain of Peter's who died trying to kill Spider-Man. And he's been thought to have been dead for, as long as it's been. I think I said it's been a year since he's been dead. And I'm dropping hints that it's this villain. Now, I don't want to say who the villain is, like who his true identity is, in case I do eventually make a video talking about it. But I'll give you a hint. No, that will give it away. I can't really give a hint. But anyway, I drop hints like who he is throughout my stories, because he creates villains. In one story I wrote, he didn't create Venom, but he showed up to prison while Eddie Brock was sitting in the cell and gave him the symbiote back. And Eddie Brock's cellmate Cleus Cassidy then begs him, like, take me with you. And he goes, no, you are a killer. We only go after the Spider-Man and those close to him because they are not innocent. And neither are you. So then he slashes his throat and then leaves. And while Cletus Cassidy like falls down and dies, a piece of the symbiote rubbed off onto Cassidy's hand. So the piece of the symbiote starts like forming around him, and once it gets to his neck where he was slashed at, it gets inside of his neck and mixes with his blood, turning the symbiote red. And then, you know, he becomes Carnage. Now, the reason I did that was because I wanted this to be like a more gory Spider-Man story, only because I added Carnage in there. And I wanted to change up Carnage's origin, like keep it accurate to the comics, but also different from the comics. So, instead of it being a cut on Cletus Cassidy's hand, it was him getting slashed in the throat. But, yeah. So, those were my 2 origin stories. The Figment, like I said, I'm dropping hints, and I am planning on writing a story where the Figment actually breaks the Jackal out of prison, and then another story where the Figment gives Kirk Connors the serum again, turning him into a lizard. Now, I did write a story where the Figment shows up to prison again and helps break out Fred Myers, the Boomerang. But this story, I kind of went a little different and wrote that Fred Myers was the first ever criminal Spider-Man stopped. The thing is, though, when they fight, Fred Myers keeps telling him, like, because he's wearing, you know, the Boomerang suit and he's got the mask, and he's telling Spider-Man, like, I was the first villain you ever put in jail. And then Spider-Man just, like, draws a blank. And the only villain he remembered, like, the first ever criminal he put in jail that he can remember was a guy who kidnapped someone, and Spider-Man chased him down at Coney's Island. So he's like, Jeffrey? He's like, what? No. And then he goes on to say, I murdered an old man. You nearly beat me to death. And then that's when it clicks in Peter's head. Oh, crap. This is Uncle Ben's killer. Yeah, it was just something I wanted to do. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of change the story up a little bit. But at the same time, like, I tried to keep it as accurate to Spider-Man as possible. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Wow, almost 30 minutes. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.